Think about real estate though, like this idea of buying leads in lots of different locations and assigning a lead to an individual agent based on the zip code where they work seems like something that's great for the agent, but not necessarily great for the consumer, because the consumer is expecting somebody to follow up quickly. My name is John Bowler, and this is the None Size Fits All podcast, where every week I'll be sharing my candid thoughts on what's happening in the real estate industry. Good afternoon. Welcome to the None Size Fits All podcast. My name is John Bowler, co-founder of Grid Consulting. Today, we're going to be talking about lead routing and focusing on the consumer's anticipated outcome or expected outcome versus your agent's wants or desires. So I guess what prompted this, there was a recent post on Facebook where somebody was asking about rotating leads. So I buy leads, I'm a team leader. Is the best scenario to do a round robin? Is it a jump ball, also known as a Shark Tank? Or should I route leads by zip code? And when you start thinking about that concept, it lends you to really think about, why are you even asking that question? So it seems like the wrong question. When I submit my information as a consumer, whether that's on an Uber, a Lyft, an Amazon, what I've come to expect is this concept that they're going to figure it out independent of who's the person that's going to give it to me. So when I do my Amazon Prime order or Amazon Now, they basically come out and they find the driver and they deliver the food to me. Think about real estate though, like this idea of buying leads in lots of different locations and assigning a lead to an individual agent based on the zip code where they work seems like something that's great for the agent, but not necessarily great for the consumer, because the consumer is expecting somebody to follow up quickly. So when I think about that question, I think about that post, it's important that we start to think about this from the standpoint of the consumer's expectations, not from what the agent wants. Focus on the consumer's outcome. What is the consumer expecting and looking for? Focus on getting 100% of the leads that you purchased connected with somebody quickly, and then figure out the idea of fair and routing rules and all those good things. When we were working hundreds of thousands of leads a month, the thing that we realized is it doesn't matter. The consumer's feelings or beliefs on the brand that they're using is not going to matter, or they're not going to care about the fact that somebody only works in this zip code or this zip code or this zip code, or this person didn't get their leads this month, or they didn't hit their quota. So when we start thinking about that, we think about how can you do a jump ball for every single lead? And yeah, you could exhaust your agents by putting too many people on that jump ball line and making their phone ring too frequently. But you could actually start looking at it and say, you know what, maybe if I put 4 or 5 people on the jump ball line, statistically speaking, I'm not going to over exhaust them with their phone, and the consumer is actually going to get a higher connection rate in real time. Everyone listening to this podcast has heard this concept of if you call lead back quickly, you'll convert more. Well, it's true. And the quicker you actually reply, the higher conversion is going to be, because you're getting that person in real time and they're less likely to be looking for another person. So as the business owner, the person that's putting their credit card down, your investment and the consumer's expectations dictate whether or not the commission is going to be paid or not. So we should be critical of this aspect. We should be thinking about how do we eliminate the friction between that consumer and my professional. And the way to do that is by giving enough people at bats to potentially capture that client. So I learned a lot about this when I was an inside sales manager. So, you have this saying where you start talking to people and it's like, I want it to be fair. I deserve an X number of leads. But at the end of the day, the end user, the person that's hitting submit, is the one that's going to be purchasing. So that's your target audience. So you need to be thinking about what can I do differently as a leader to actually track this? How can I actually make modifications to the way that my infrastructure and process works? So the way that I would look at it is, do you have a queue? So one, do you have a queue? And if the queue is round robin, you're right away going to create some type of kind of latency between yourself or your team and the consumer. But then how are you tracking it? How are you tracking the effectiveness of your people and the system that you have? I recently was doing an exercise and looking at basically the difference between connecting somebody 10% of the time versus 30, and the margin to a team leader was a delta of about 25%. So for somebody that's a team leader that is doing everything right by their agents and doing everything by spreading the wealth and giving everyone their share of the pie, that's where your margin is going, because you're focused on the person that said, I didn't get enough leads or I didn't get this. But the reality is you could have created a system and then tracked it regularly and had a queue where you're looking at it weekly and making modifications where everyone still gets the fair amount, but you're solving both for the consumer as well as the professional. So rewind a little bit and thinking about my previous role leading the concierge team, There was only one way to ensure that everyone is going to be happy if they're enrolled in the program. And that means for every single lead, independent of the day of the week, the time of the day, the holiday, we need to ensure that every single lead would get a response within 30 seconds. The only way to do that is through software, through process, through data. And you need to be able to say, okay, this is the percentage of time where we didn't hit that SLA of 30 seconds. So I look at this and say, okay, like if I'm the team leader, how does this apply to my business as a real estate broker or team leader? Thinking about how do I make the consumer happy? And the consumer is going to be happy if they get somebody to respond quickly. And the way that they're going to respond quickly is by getting multiple people on the line to potentially answer it. You can figure out the fair piece later, but it all comes down to understanding that your consumer is the one that is ultimately going to buy or sell the home with you. So getting to them quickly is the first priority. And then thinking about how are you going to track it? How are you going to make it fair? All of that good stuff. That comes after the fact. That's something that is totally what you should do. But I think we've often in the industry flipped it and we make decisions based on our team's expectations and not based on the consumer expectation or the consumer demand. So think about how are you looking at it? Are you looking at it from the lens of yourself and your team? Or are you looking at it from the lens of the consumer? Because guess what? Your commissions and your margins are tied to the consumer's happiness with the service and their ability to get somebody on the line. That's all I have. I hope everyone found this valuable and have a good weekend. Thanks. Thank you again for listening. Every week I'll be releasing fresh content, so tune in. And if it's of value, please share it with your network.